we need to talk about the freeze response in sexual assault. There is a desperate lack of understanding, causing more shame for the victims, and also doesn't allow the people who love the victims to actually support them in a way that's helpful. So if you keep replaying how you reacted in your head, wondering why you didn't fight or scream, or feeling guilty for quote unquote letting it happen, I need you to know that your body didn't fail you, it saved you. In this video, I'm going to help you understand exactly why your body responded the way that it did, and how you can start to rebuild trust and safety in your body so that sex and intimacy can feel pleasurable to you. By the way, I'm Danie. I'm a queer somatic sexologist, trauma specialist, and a survivor of sexual assault. I guide queer women and non-binary folks to transform trauma patterns into deeper pleasure and connection. So let's talk about the biggest myth around sexual assault. The most common things that I've heard, and I've also felt myself, if you didn't fight back or say no, that means that you wanted it, or that it wasn't assault, it wasn't that bad, or that you must have consented in some way. This is incorrect. If you grew up hearing the phrase no means no, it can add an extra layer of shame that you didn't say no, so therefore you consented, right? But consent is not black and white. Even if you don't say no, that does not mean that you consented to what happened. Just because you didn't say no doesn't mean it was a yes. These type of beliefs keep so many survivors stuck in shame. But the truth is, the way your body responds to extreme stress, like a sexual assault, is not a conscious, logical choice that you make. It's actually an automatic response, which happens subcortically, or below your conscious awareness in your body and nervous system. So let's break down the physiology. This is really important to understand because it sheds light on why your body responded the way that it did. So let's do a quick refresh of the nervous system in case you slept through biology like me. So your nervous system has stress responses. There are 4 main ones: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. The most common responses to sexual assault are freeze and also sometimes fawn. Your nervous system sizes up a threat within milliseconds. Again, you're not aware of this happening, and then it chooses a stress response that has the best likelihood of helping you survive the threat. And the freeze response happens when your system sees that it is unlikely or impossible that you could fight the threat or run away. Freeze typically happens when you are overpowered. Because assault and rape are about power, your system quickly sizes up what's going on and realizes that you are overpowered. So trying to fight or trying to run away not only could not work, but could also cause you more harm or even die. So in that situation, when you are overpowered, the freeze response actually makes the most sense because it is your greatest chance at surviving the threat. Your body has your survival in mind at all times. And the freeze response is not just you doing nothing, right? It appears like you're doing nothing on the outside, but on the inside, your body is actually working overtime to try to get you out of this situation alive. It's like when you see a possum playing dead. You can see that eventually it hops back up and scurries away after the threat is gone. We are human animals after all. So just like that possum, when your nervous system goes into a freeze state, there are things happening in your body. Your nervous system slows down your heart rate, it reduces your blood pressure, your limbs can feel heavy or stiff, like it's hard to move, you feel literally frozen, and your body also can release natural painkillers. If you are unable to escape the threat and you have to stay there, then the next best line of defense is to lessen your perceived pain of the experience. And then this is where dissociation can come in. And after an assault, you may have trouble remembering, you may feel foggy, or you may not feel any emotions from it at all. And that's because your body, your nervous system, was trying to take you mentally as far away from what was going on as possible. And this mental fog that can happen after an assault can be one of the reasons that it can take you a while to even realize what happened was assault. And just because it takes you longer to realize doesn't mean that it's any less of an assault. You froze during an assault not because you wanted it, Not because you didn't respect yourself, not because you didn't try hard enough to prevent it, but it's because your body decided that was your best bet, that was your best route at surviving the threat. And it worked, right? Because you're here watching this video. For all you know, if you tried to fight or leave, you would have been hurt even worse or even killed. And it's so important to acknowledge the body's intelligence in this realm, especially because there is so much shame. And it's not your fault that you are questioning your body's response and feeling so much shame around it, because unfortunately, we do live in a culture of victim blaming. And secondly, we live in a culture that praises logic and reason and thinking and views the body as something, as an inconvenience, as something to just drag along, that your body gets in the way of your mind's goals, right? So it makes sense that your first response wouldn't be to consider, oh, maybe my body responded intelligently to that situation. That's not going to be your first thought. Your first thought's going to be, oh, well, I should have ran away. I should have said something. You're trying to use logic and reason to understand what happened when logic and reason weren't a part of it. It was all primal survival instinct. And when you try to apply logic to it, that's where the shame comes in. Whether you're shaming yourself or you receive that shame from others that are well-meaning, but they also still cause harm, saying things like, oh, well, if you respected yourself, you would have fought back, or why didn't you try harder, or why'd you let that happen to you, right? So not only was I dealing with a lot of shame from all these things that had happened to me, I also felt so much shame because of the attitudes of the people around me. I remember this was years ago. I was watching 13 Reasons Why when it first came out, and there's a scene where she's getting assaulted in a hot tub, and it just shows her, it like zooms in on her face, and she's laying there limp, not saying anything, not flailing or screaming or anything like someone might expect of someone that's being assaulted. And the person I was watching it with said, well, why isn't she's not even doing anything? And I remember that feeling like a knife in my gut because she was freezing. I felt like I couldn't talk about my experience as openly and honestly as I wanted to, for fear of what people might think, for what my reaction was. And it's a really lonely, confusing, terrible place to be in. And these types of responses from other people are not a reflection of a failing on your part. They're a reflection of the ignorance around the body's stress responses and how they work. I noticed the freezing showing up in my sex life with people who I actually wanted to have sex with. I wanted to feel connected and safe to this person mentally, but my body just couldn't do it. And I want to give an example here. So for me, when someone wanted to go down on me, it was wildly uncomfortable. Like, I would literally squirm because it was so fucking vulnerable. Having someone focus solely on my pleasure was really hard for me because trauma teaches you that your pleasure doesn't matter. And of course, I internalized that belief. So something being only about me felt like I wanted to throw up. So even though the assault happened in the past, whether that's weeks, months, years, decades earlier, your body still remembers. So when you are trying to be intimate or have sex with someone that you actually want to be having sex with, you may not be able to feel relaxed, to feel turned on, to feel safe, to feel comfortable. And it can feel like your body is betraying you all over again. Your body learned to associate sex with danger. But thankfully, just like that association was learned, it can be unlearned as well. There was a point for me, and maybe you can relate to this too, where I felt like my trauma would always define me. It would always be this thing that I have to reveal to a partner, um, this mark on me that made me broken in some way. And I'm happy to say that that isn't true. I don't feel that way anymore. My identity and my life no longer revolves around my sexual trauma. I don't feel like it's taking up most of my heart and body and soul. it feels like it's a right-sized piece of my story. I can't erase it, right? It still happened, but it's not my reference point for who I am anymore. And there are different phases of healing from sexual trauma, right? There's the victim where you were helpless and powerless and taken advantage of. And it's really important to acknowledge that. And then there's the survivor where you can say this thing happened to me, but I'm going to be okay and I'm taking steps to be okay. And there's something beyond that where you stop trying to return to who you were before the trauma and you start connecting to your sexual self in a way that you never have before. You start getting curious about your pleasure and you start embracing who you are as a sexual being and seeing just how good you can feel. And you experience more freedom than you thought was possible in your body. And I call this phase becoming feral. You've shed the layers of domestication, right? Of trying to be small and polite and acceptable and nice. And trauma only amplifies those social stories. So when you become feral, you shed all that. You return to your natural wild state. It's not this chaos, but it's this knowing that you have this vitality in you, that your sensuality brings you to the present moment. It helps you enjoy life. It gives you juice to keep going when life gets hard. And of course, this isn't linear, right? The victim survivor to feral pipeline, you bounce back and forth between each identity at different times. There are so many layers. So it's not a linear progression, but I do think that a lot gets missed out on when you stop at the survivor piece and you don't have the opportunity to explore what's beyond that and create new reference points for yourself and your sexuality and your identity. Often there's that point where like I know that that's true, but that doesn't match my lived reality, right? So getting to a place where you both know that's true and you feel it in your body not just being a side of harm but a side of possibility and joy and pleasure is fucking life changing. It feels like freedom. And of course, this doesn't happen overnight, but I don't know what path could be more rewarding than working to feel at home and feel joy in your own body, in your own skin. Your body can catch up to what your mind knows, that you do want to have sex with people sometimes, and your body can learn that that can feel safe too. Positive reparative experiences are what allows your body and your nervous system to update and uncouple the association with sex and danger and pain. So, in other words, experiences that you didn't have or didn't have enough of in the realms of sex and intimacy. So, without this new input, your body will keep responding to sex and intimacy with those same stress responses, even with a safe person. Because again, the body does not use logic, it learns through experiences. And this is the biggest missing piece when it comes to sexual healing. You can do the talking and understanding, and you can even comprehend that it's not your fault, but you also need experiences of intimacy that are at your body's exact pace, that are exactly what you want, and that stop exactly when you want them to. So chances are you haven't had the kind of slow, present, attuned experiences that truly help your body feel a deep sense of safety. And it's not for lack of trying. You are probably doing your very best to go at your body's pace. If you have a partner or are connecting with other people sexually, they're probably doing their best to make you feel safe and do what you need. That intention is so beautiful, but it often doesn't get you the results you're looking for. Because when you experience sexual trauma, one of the most common things that happens is dissociation. So, geniusly, you disconnect from your body or you move your awareness away from your body so you don't feel the extent of the emotional and the physical pain in the moment. That way, you can get through that situation intact, or at least more intact than you would have been if you would have stayed completely present the whole time, right? So, it's a genius protection strategy, dissociation. And there comes a point where that that self-protection strategy can be getting in the way of deeper connections that you want to have. And this dissociation usually lasts long after the fact, and it makes it really hard for you to even know what you need and want, and therefore is really hard to communicate to a partner something that you're not even sure of yourself. You probably know how important it is to feel safe in sexual and intimate experiences, and you probably also have noticed how hard that is. Safety comes from choice, from having options. And it can be hard to even imagine what your options are when you haven't had choice in the past. It's kind of like when someone asks you, "What do you want for dinner?" And you're like, "I don't know. That's such a big question." But when someone gives you three options, that choice feels more obvious to you. So just saying, "What do you need to feel safe?" that can be really hard to conceptualize when safety isn't a feeling that you've experienced a lot of. And without that foundation of safety, your system can't rewire that stress response to sex and intimacy. So you end up pushing through and performing, or maybe avoiding sex and intimacy altogether because it just feels too overwhelming. So the deep healing begins when you start to listen to your body. You're able to find your body's yes and no, not yet, maybe, all the nuances of what you do and don't want. And this is what I call body trust. It's the foundation for feeling safe, sensual, and connected again. Let's break down my body trust process. Step 1, you want to learn to read your body's signals. You want to notice what safety feels like in your body. This helps you figure out what you need moment to moment in a connection to stay present and connected instead of dissociating and shut down. Step 2, you want to track your triggers. So it can be really tempting to avoid sex because of how triggering it is, and it can feel like the triggers are more powerful than you. Triggers often feel more powerful when we ignore them or avoid them. You are more powerful than your triggers. This step alone, tracking triggers, was huge for me because then I was able to notice I was actually dissociating during sex a lot more than I realized. So when you can track your triggers, you'll start to notice the different positions or energies or different acts that cause you to dissociate. And as you have more knowledge about how your specific dissociation works, then you're opening the door for more opportunities of presence and coming back to your body in ways that feel manageable, not overwhelming. This helps you feel more in control of your body and your responses, instead of feeling like you're in the passenger seat and your triggers are just driving you around all the time. Step 3, you want to de-thaw your freeze response. The freeze response actually inhibits movement in your muscles. So you want to microdose experiences of moving the energy instead of staying frozen and shut down. So that's this way you can slowly and gently bring your awareness and bring yourself back online. So the goal with sex and intimacy after sexual assault is to follow your body's pace, which is almost always slower than what your mind thinks you should be doing or what your mind thinks you are ready for. By doing that, you can stay attuned to what you need moment to moment instead of pushing past your body's limits and ignoring your own boundaries. Body trust is the foundation of my feral connection method, but it is just one piece of enjoying sex and intimacy after trauma. Because it's easy to say what we don't like and what doesn't feel good, it's important to get clear on what you do want and dissolve shame around that. And this can be really tricky for survivors of sexual trauma. Trauma can influence what turns us on. And the sooner that we can normalize that and accept that, the closer we are to feeling the most pleasure that we can feel in our bodies. And with this information, then you have the keys to your own kingdom, so to speak, and your arousal is within your control. And after you have that self-knowledge of your own pleasure, the last piece is you want to feel confident communicating about sex and intimacy. You want to be able to communicate your boundaries and to have consent conversations that help you feel safer. And by the way, these don't have to be clinical. They can actually be arousing and fun. So this confidence that you are that you're able to show up for yourself, that you're able to hold your boundaries and clearly communicate what is and isn't okay with you before and during sex, makes sex and intimacy feel less intimidating because you know that you're going to step up for yourself when and if you need to. So you can probably start to see that this is not only about you feeling safe in your body again, but taking it even further and exploring the heights of pleasure that maybe you didn't even know was possible for you in your body. So you can get lost in the moment instead of feeling lost in your triggers. If this sounds like exactly what you've been missing, I want to invite you to book a connection call with me at the first link below. We'll collaborate on your specific path to go from feeling intimidated by your sexual self to feeling free in your sexual expression and embracing your sexual self with joy. But if you want to learn more about how you can use the feral effect to feel more relaxed and comfortable with sex and intimacy after trauma, you can listen to that limited series by clicking the second link below. The main point I want to get across with this video is sexual healing is a winding road, and there are times where you feel really excited and then you feel like you're moving backwards and you feel really scared. Every little moment where you feel a little bit of hope, a little bit of joy, a little bit of pleasure is proof that you're healing and proof that there's so much more joy and pleasure in store for you.